Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good whatever it may be for you right now. This is Lose the Taboo on Mental Health with Jared Cash. Buckle up, get ready, we going for a ride. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. I'm so excited about this episode. I'll tell you what, I've been looking forward to having one of my best friends on, Matt Green, for a while now, and we've had to kind of reschedule a couple times, but just because it's just brewing and getting ready for an amazing episode. So I've been so excited about this one. Matt and I, Matt in the past few years has been one of the most solid foundations in my life, and our friendship has just grown tremendously over just a few years, even when Matt lived in a different state for a while, and then I moved to Washington State, and kind of through it all, like, our friendship has just continued to grow. So not that everyone was really curious about the whole friendship cycle, but all that to say, I'm so excited. I've got one of my best friends on here, and Matt, thanks so much for being on, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jared. It's like you said, it's been a long time coming. Definitely honored to be part of the podcast. It's been fun watching it grow, and I'm excited to be part of it.
Definitely. Well, Matt is one of the most talented guys I know, really just super smart, great insight on life. So I think you're really going to enjoy our conversation today. But before we jump into anything, Matt, can you give us a bullet point list of just an introduction of Matt Green?
Yeah, for sure. Matt Green, 32, live in San Antonio. That's where I met Jared. Married to my beautiful wife, Erica. I have two boys, one's 6 years old, one's 6 month old. So got a pretty nice little gap there, going through the baby phase again. Lover of coffee, lover of real estate, and good conversation. So excited to jump on in.
Super cool. Yeah. Normally I would kind of ease into a conversation a little bit more, but since we're so close, Matt, I just want to really dive in and get going on this episode, because I think there's going to be a lot of nuggets of truth for people as we have this conversation. So when I met Matt, actually, it was during kind of one of the most challenging seasons of his life, and there was a lot of things that took place that really just was a challenge for Matt. And so I kind of met him right in the middle of that, and so it's been incredible to see him walk through that season and how much he's grown since. But it was a season that really tested Matt, and it was something that kind of all aspects of his life he really had to kind of wrestle with and kind of take steps forward in. So Matt, man, I want you just to dive into a little bit of what that looked like, and then we'll go off of that.
Yeah, no, 100%. So yeah, you hit it on the head. Yeah, I think I ultimately met you in probably like the darkest 7 months of my life. It's kind of how I always think about that phase. So I think it would have been kind of starting in December, January. So kind of turn of 2017, 2018 timeframe, basically through the end of the summer of 2018. And so a lot of it started with a medical diagnosis. So it was, and kind of leading up to it, I had a lot of signs and indications that, like maybe my testosterone levels weren't in the best place. So my wife, prudently was like, hey, maybe go get those checked out. So like, awesome, we'll go get those done. And in doing so, we actually identified the presence of a pituitary tumor, which was forcing my testosterone levels to be basically bottomed out. And the doctor thought that it had probably been present since, probably my teenage years. It's one of those things that just kind of grows slow and kind of undetected over time. It's not cancerous or anything like that, but it was enough to basically suppress my testosterone to nothing. And that kind of left me, obviously relieved in the sense that I was able to find it, but in starting to kind of go through the process of treating it, basically had an inflow of testosterone into my system that I had never had. So there was all the, physiological stuff that came with that, you get feel a lot more aggressive. You feel a lot, I was starting to, work out a bunch, and it was just a whole bunch of stuff on that side. But then I had a lot of like the dark side of it was a lot of like why God kind of questioning that kind of really snowballed on me, frankly. It was like, you kind of give the enemy an inch, he takes a mile kind of thing. So it was a lot of, a lot of fish shaking kind of stuff. Like, why would you do this to me? Why would I go through my whole adolescence and teenage years without this vital thing? Um, I broke my arm in seventh, eighth grade, and the doctor was like, yeah, he's got tons of growth plates. So it was even as silly as things of like, well, should I be taller than I am now? But my personality had been the same. Would I have made the same friends? Would I made the same decisions? Like, am I at this point in my life, like by error? Like basically, am I where I was programmed to be? And it was all of those questions that really kind of started to make me make like just really bad decisions. I was so mean, man. Um, I look back and don't even recognize the person that I had become. I was so mean to my wife. I was like, uh, just trying to put as much distance between my friends, between God first and foremost. I was like, hey, you can take a hike.
Yeah.
Yeah, you clearly don't have my best interest in hand. So like I went on this journey of like, let me prove that God isn't who he says he is. Right. Like, I was having all this stuff, and in doing so, man, like I just kind of like opened the floodgates to just let my heart as harden as much as it possibly could have, I think. And I was just being just a really, really nasty person. And so, yeah, and in the meantime, I had, a lot of friends inviting me to Impact at the time, like, hey, y'all should come check it out. Y'all should come check it out. And I wanted nothing to do with, church really. But Erica, she is like the most God-fearing, like she went through hell for, those 7 or 8 months having to deal with me, frankly. But we went reluctantly, and I would stand there and I'd listen to the songs and I'd be like, no, it's a bunch, no, let me poke holes in all these songs. And then, dude, I don't know what it was. It was, Corey Asbury's song "Reckless." Just like was what kind of there's a line in it where it's like, when I was your foe, still your love fought. And I was like, no, yeah, I couldn't have been more of a foe in that season, just doing everything I could. And like I just kept feeling it, man. Like I was the one sheep that wandered away, and whatever parable you want to pick of the prodigal son, the lost coin, whatever, right? And I just felt it, and it was almost got to a point where it took more effort to try to push God away than it would have just to let him back in. Mm. Like I was being so stubborn about it, and then one day I was literally standing in worship at Impact, and you were standing up there on the stage, and I literally just told myself like I can't physically like create this much space anymore. Like I want to let him back into my life. And like I literally just walked up to you, and I think I just like hug you, and at least I think I'm pretty sure I hugged you, and just like walk up there, and like from that day on, like dude, I literally felt a whole life, like my life got back on track. Our relationships got back on track. But it was just this, oh dude, it was such a brutal mental place to be in for 6 or 7 months. Just so much questioning, so much just nastiness, dude. I was just a vicious person.
Before we move on, I'm curious, where would you say your mental health was during that time period?
Oh, it was really, really dark, man. And I think it would probably be described, I think, as probably more depression oriented, just because I was just like, I felt like I was in despair, like I'm not knowing where I should go, what I should do, who am I? I was just trying to create space. It was like I was trying to create all this space from people, and almost like forcing myself into isolation, mm-hmm. which was making it even worse, because then the more time I could just sit in my own thoughts, the more like they were just running in all the wrong directions. So like where I should go, what should I do? Who should I talk to? What's the right way to lead my life? All these things. Right. And I was just like, and I got to a point where I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore at all. Like this life is miserable. So I was just like, I felt isolated. I mean, I literally called Erica one day in the midst of it. I think she was, she might've been on a trip. She wasn't home. And I was literally like balled up on the floor, bawling my eyes out, crying, telling her I can't do this anymore. Like it was just, I was in a dark, dark spot.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah, man, that's just the description of it. I know, and just thinking back, the place you're in at that point, um, and the reality is, like, if you would have continued on that track, it wouldn't have just improved by itself. It's
No.
not like it was just this seasonal like darkness, and then all of a sudden it would just be fixed without you putting in the effort or doing anything. And so I'm curious, when you look at that time period before we kind of start looking at some of the things that you did to really make a difference. Um, how difficult would you say it was to really like see hope in the middle of it?
Uh, Frankly, it felt impossible. Like I didn't feel like there was any hope. Um, and again, that's where like the more you sit in isolation, I feel like the less you feel hopeful in your circumstance, because I don't think our tendency is to let me think about the positive in the situation. It was like a very victim mentality, a very woe is me kind of mindset, and of just like, how can I make myself feel even worse in this situation? It was really weird. Like it was just like how can I pile it on? Because in some maybe somehow like that will make it better. I don't know. It was like it's really a logical uh, flow. But I mean, it was weird, dude. I was just like, I would go to a coffee shop and I would just sit there and just mentally beat myself up, tell myself how like miserable you are. And I did, like I said, you give the enemy any space at all. And it was just like, I felt every dynamic of myself change, from my personality, my just view on people, on life, my relationships. It was just all completely twisted. Um,
And I found, during dark seasons, during those periods where like mental health is really, it's a struggle, so many times our thought process, it isn't rational. Like, it doesn't make sense the way that we're, thinking. Like, you're saying you almost were just like wanting to continue in it, even though it was making it worse. Like, that's the only thing that made sense to you in the moment. And it's like in those moments, it's super hard to think clearly, and our thoughts dictate so much. And so if we're allowing, like you said, allowing Satan to, you know, get a foothold, and just, he loves it when we tell ourselves lies and when we don't focus on
mm-hmm.
the truth, because he knows, our thoughts have so much power, and we start to believe it the more that we tell ourselves and the longer that we sit in the darkness. And so, curious, you mentioned there was that moment at church that God really spoke to you, and you just were kind of like, I can't fight this anymore. I'm done with living this type of mindset out. What were some of your, like, at that point, it's not like things just drastically changed overnight, but it was finally a place of surrender. So kind of describe a little bit of maybe what that looked like when you finally were like, man, I'm tired of fighting against God. I know you and I had that amazing moment at
Mm-hmm.
church, but kind of what did that look like in the coming days and weeks?
Yeah, I honestly think it was mainly just Erica. Frankly, like a lot of times people are like, like I won't believe unless I see. Right? I won't, like, if I don't see God, or I can't. I need to see it to believe it. And a lot of the times, I think God shows Himself in so many ways, and He was, I think, showing Himself to me through my wife, right, the one that I was cleaved to, the one that we are one, and through probably the most challenging time she's ever experienced either, right? Like she just never wavered in her faith. She was like, that's who she was going to, so persistent in prayer. Never, like, she had every single reason to just say like, pound sand, like get out of here. Like you're a jerk. You're mean. I don't deserve this, because she didn't. I still feel so much pent up shame and stuff from that period, but she like just almost doubled down on her trust, right? At least that's what I was seeing. She probably was feeling stuff different internally, but I just saw her like constantly in prayer. Never, like, she was still leaning in. She was like just trying to be there for me as much as I would allow, frankly. And I was just like, man, like, yeah, you kept hearing, I kept, hearing those lyrics and stuff, like I said, from like Corey Asbury and stuff like that. And it was like he is like, he couldn't be showing himself to me more than the most amazing spouse that I could have ever had, like by my side in the darkest period ever. And then I also had just so many amazing friends that probably knew. I don't think that anybody knew outside of her what was going on, but I think that they could tell I was in a different place than they probably had seen me in the past. But nobody else was like, I'm cool with hanging out with you. Like, it was so many folks. It was you, Andrew, Zach, Neil, all those kind of guys. And a ton of other amazing families just kept leaning in. I don't know if they could just sense something was off. Um, but I think a lot of it was just the people around me. I was seeing God through the people around me, not giving up on me when they frankly had every reason to.
That's the amazing thing about God. Like you said, is it's that thought process of, he leaves the 99 to pursue the one that's headed off the wrong direction. And that's the thing that's beautiful, is that God's not limited in the way that he speaks to us, and he's constantly pursuing us. One of, like his greatest desire is that everyone would turn to him and choose to love him back. And that's the amazing thing, is God will work through people. He'll work through his word, through prayer. He'll work through circumstances, through songs, just through all these different things that are said. Just it all piles together, and it's just God continuing to pursue us, even in our mess, even in our darkness. And that's the beautiful thing, is that we do have a God that's so personal, that seeks that out.
Yeah.
And
And there's so many things that like resonate with you different. Like, before you go through any tough patches or your faith's ever tested, like worship songs are like all very, like they all have like a very positive, like uplifting, praise and like worship, like we're going to dance and sing. Where like when you go through a dark period, I feel like lyrics start to come out of them that like really make you grateful of like things you've gone through. That like There's a song out now, and there's like a little snippet of the I opened my book and they're right here. So it's rain came and wind blew, but my house was built on you. And I was like, I couldn't have brought more wind and rain to our household than I did. But like I said, having Erica and just our home, having God as our foundation, like is what I think kept us from falling.
And it's really amazing, that you're able to reflect back. And I can't help but think, there's lots of times where every single one of us have things happen to us that are out of our control. Like you couldn't have ever imagined that the news that you got and the change in life and just all of that would happen. You didn't expect that to happen. You didn't just like look forward to that and think that was going to happen. It came out of nowhere. And we're all going to get hit with those different seasons, and some seasons are harder than others. And there's going to be really, really difficult seasons like you had to walk through. And like you said, there's such a need to have a support system around you, and as I look at what you've shared, like not everyone's has a spouse, but we all have someone in our life.
Yeah.
And we have family or friends. We have people that we really have to lean on and be open to their help during times when it gets super difficult and dark. And then even for people listening, just the thought of not giving up, because I reflect back on, like I've had my parents on before, but I reflect back on my conversation with them, and like in high school when I was going through depression, like I was so difficult to be around and like was just so ugly to them, and they just continue to love me through it. And they could have easily like still continued to be my parents, but like not given the effort that they gave, the intentionality that they gave, and they just kept being there for me. And they're one of the reasons I was able to take steps out of that and see growth and healing. So just encouragement to not give up on the people that God's placed in your life, especially when they're going through those dark seasons.
Yeah, I think one of the enemy's probably number one goals to start is to get you in isolation, right? As soon as he can get you by yourself, right? Thinking in your own brain, like running down all the rabbit holes, planting those seeds, right? That's the worst thing. But you being around other believers and just people that are just gonna, be there for you, I think is like one of the best ways to kind of fight off your mind going places it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, 100%. And as I look at your life, for people that this is their first time meeting you, I want to share that it's been a process for Matt over the years, but it's been incredible these past years to just see the growth in his life. And I personally have been able to see it each week, through our friendship of just the steps that he's continued to take from that, not allowing that to dictate his life, but taking steps. And Matt has just grown in all areas of his life. It's incredible. The kind of father that he is and husband is something that encourages me, really pushes me to be a better husband and father. And so I want to see, Matt, you've had so much growth. You've done the hard work to step out of that darkness that you were in. What are some things that have been really key for you and are still key for you to grow in just kind of the different aspects of your life?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones for me, there's two. One of them is acknowledging and finally like giving up the control over that. I get to dictate how things go. I think, I think a lot of leading up to like that dark period was like everything that I tried to do and I tried to make happen did, and everything was going pretty good. So I kind of had this perception that like I kind of had control of things. And so I think that's a big one, is just kind of like, releasing that control over over the plans that, that are had for your life. And then for me, it's like, I start to get into, I guess, bigger periods of funks, like when I'm not being, consistent with whether it's us going to church, me just being in like fellowship with anybody, like if we can just, again, get in isolation or just getting in like a routine, like that can be kind of challenging for me when I'm not making point. Like I've started making sure that things like, I'm going through acts right now, like making sure this is close to me, making sure that, I've got my father-in-law, Ruben, who's like, hey, I'm going to go through it too. So now I have somebody that I can, hey, this is really neat. Like, what do you think about this? Right. Like he's been huge too. And so I think a lot of it is not thinking that you get to dictate everything that happens to you, and also just making sure that you have really healthy habits and routines. I think, that was part of your sermon a couple of weeks ago, right? Your health, because really healthy habits. One of them is, your spirit, the spiritual side of your life. And I notice a big difference in when I'm growing and trusting more is when I'm doing those kind of things. Because otherwise, I can be kind of selfish and think that I get to dictate how things go.
That's really good. No, I appreciate you sharing that. That's solid. Kind of curious, if you could share practically as well, like when you're in a good rhythm, what does that look like for someone that may just be kind of going like, I want to create some rhythms in my life. So like, what have you found, whether you're currently like in the zone with it right now or not,
Yeah,
but
no,
over these past couple of years, what has been some things that you've done on a regular basis that have just been healthy rhythms that you put in place? One of them you said is making sure that you're spending time with God individually and getting in His Word. We know one of them is making church a priority for your family and raising them around other believers in the community.
Yeah.
What are some of the other practical things that you've done to make sure that you are healthy all the way around?
Sure. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a struggle for some of these the last 6 months, because our most recent son has decided he doesn't want to be as good of a sleeper as his older brother, so it's kind of threw a little bit of a wrench in it. But for me, it's I like to journal in the mornings, so like I carry this typically around with me everywhere. I've got another old one. I actually have a journal that I was using back in like that period of time too. So I can really flip back a couple of years to kind of just see where I was brain space wise. So I like to journal. Reading helps me a lot. like just outside of my Bible, just like starting my day off with like some journaling, reading, and some exercise are usually the things that kind of get me um, going in a good, like exercise helps so much with my ability to manage my emotions. And
Hmm.
so that's a big one for me. Again, I have not been in a good routine the last 6 or 7 months in that area. I'm doing a little bit better more recently, but yeah, those are the three things: read, journal, and exercise in the morning are big.
Which means to do so, you've got to be disciplined enough to create the space
Yeah.
in the morning before work. So it means, being disciplined enough to get up early and to be able to do those things. Yeah, for me, I have not been in a great routine here the past couple weeks, and like it makes a huge difference
Yeah.
whenever I'm out of a routine and out of some really healthy rhythms. It's like my day just starts off on the wrong foot, and it's hard enough to have a great day anyways, but when you're starting on the wrong foot, then it's just
Mhm.
that much harder to really get in step. And so luckily I'm doing this 75-day challenge, like the
You did
hard
75
challenge.
hard.
Yeah, 75 hard.
There you go.
And the hardest thing is I'm drinking a gallon of water, and I realized that I didn't drink any water beforehand, really, on a
Oh,
regular
dude. Oh,
basis.
man.
And so that's like been one of the hardest things, but it's made me really implement some super healthy habits back in place with drinking water. It's
Yeah.
making me read. Uh, so I'm reading every day, and then of course exercising and watching what I eat. And so it's been a really good thing to kind of kickstart it. I mean,
It's intense.
it's very
It's
intense,
super intense.
but it's created some good habits that even afterwards I'll still maintain some of those
Yeah.
things. So yeah, a lot of our health is our physical and mental health. A lot of it is in our control. What we do, it's not all. Sometimes it's mental health circumstance, and there's different factors,
Yeah.
but a lot of it we can see improvement and take steps forward, and it just takes us creating and maintaining those healthy habits.
Yeah. There's a quote in one of the books that I read in the past called Take the Stairs. Or the book's called Take the Stairs. But he says sometimes it takes full time, double time for full time free time. And so like his idea is sometimes for short periods of time you have to do like like a double time kind of stuff, right? So for you, right, 75 hard is going to be this full time, like kind of just intense thing. But once you get out past that, like you don't need to be necessarily working out 7 days a week to maintain what you've built, right? It maybe
Hmm.
it takes 3 or 4 days of moderate exercise for you to maintain what you've developed. So sometimes it just takes a short stint of really intense, just kind of like building those habits out. And then
Hmm.
in the long run, it's more maintaining versus like being on this really intense, always trying to like grow, 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 grow. It's like, no, like I've reached a really healthy place. I just want to maintain here versus like always feeling like you have to have this super upward sloping trajectory.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. That makes a lot of sense. And really, my goal with this is to just look like Matt Green. It's kind
Oh,
of my
geez.
goal.
Then you need to stop 75 hard right now if you want to look like me, man.
Matt, what would you say if you could leave everybody with just kind of like one encouragement, like from our discussion, maybe something that God taught you, maybe something that you learned in the process, just kind of one closing thought? What would that be?
So I think one of the things that I've been reflecting on a lot lately is whether it's your career, your life, it's not always linear. Like I think we like to think of everything as linear, right? So I'm gonna use career as an example, right? Like I'm gonna graduate, I'm gonna get a job, I'm gonna promote, I'm gonna promote, I'm gonna promote, and I'm just gonna keep on working up in this nice upward trajectory, and then I'm gonna retire whenever that is, and it's just gonna be this smooth sailing. Same thing, like I'm gonna get married, we're gonna have kids, we're just gonna have this like amazing flourishing marriage forever, and then off into the sunset we go. We're gonna go live in Hawaii. Like, same thing, right? You copy and paste. Like everybody just views things typically in like this nice upward trajectory. I mean, like, look at my career, right? My career's been all over the place. I got to be a CEO before I was 30, and then I got fired, right? And then I had changing career. Like, nothing is as linear as I think you want it to be. And a lot of it is like, just because something is uncomfortable or scary or not going well, like right now, a lot of times it's for the best, to be honest with you, in the long run. If I wouldn't have gotten fired, right, and we wouldn't have moved back to San Antonio, I probably never would have flipped the house, right? Like I probably would have just been stuck in the rut that I managed to find myself in there. And so I think a lot of my words of encouragement is like, I think it's James, right? He says, consider it pure joy, right? When you face trials and tribulations, like it's hard to actually do so, but when you actually like take the time to really embody that, it can be so powerful and kind of getting you out of the ruts. Lean in with people around you and realize that, just because something's not linear doesn't mean it can't over time become exponential and turn into something really, really powerful.
Really well said, man. I would have thought that you had that memorized. I know you didn't. You just spoke that from the heart. That's so good.
I had spilled coffee all over my notes earlier. And, I'm totally kidding.
Yeah, and that's something that I wanted to kind of close with as well. So that's perfect. Is the things that we go through have the potential to be a great thing in our life because it pushes us as we get through it and as God provides and we lean into Him. It provides strength in a way that we could have never imagined. You are the kind of man that you are today and stronger than you would have been if you didn't go through that. You love differently. You look at life differently.
Yep.
Things have worked out the way that they need to, and it's because you went through a difficult time and you didn't let it stop you. You allowed it to make you stronger. And so, it's just having the faith that even though I'm in a difficult time, it's not going to define my life. I'm actually going to be stronger on the other end. Mm-hmm. That really makes a difference, and we have to remind ourselves of that on a regular basis. But it's neat to be able to look back at those times that we've seen that be true and allow that to, like we've seen God grow us in it, and it's not like it's just this thing we hope happens, but like we've seen it before, so we can have faith that He's going to do it again. So
I think that's spot on. I think now having like, to your point, something very concrete to look back on, it means all like I can now get like I can fall to that experience if when I'm in a funk and be like, no, like what you delivered me from is so incredible that like I need to get up, dust off, and keep moving forward because like now you actually have something concrete to go off of, which is so incredibly helpful.
Matt, thanks so much for being open. It's not easy to share seasons of your life that are dark like that, just in general, even like one-on-one with someone in coffee, but you got on a podcast and did it. And that takes a lot of courage, but it's going to be so encouraging you'll have no idea the impact that it's going to make as maybe it's exactly what someone needs to hear to be able to continue walking through the darkness that they find themselves in right now. So thanks for being brave and sharing your story today.
No, my pleasure. It was a lot of fun, and I hope it is a word of encouragement for somebody. And
and Matt is actually going to be starting his own podcast soon. So
hopefully, we're kind of coming up with some of the ideas now. It's going to be more. We're hoping for a little bit more lighthearted, kind of like I always wondered if I was going to do something like hard hitting politics, finance, real estate, but I just kind of want to do something a little bit fun and lighthearted in the kind of the circumstances we're in today.
Yeah, I think that's going to be much needed. You'll do a great job with that. But Matt, appreciate you so much, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Can't wait to catch up with you again soon. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen to this episode. Really excited about us just continuing to take steps forward together, and I hope you were encouraged by Matt's story. I will see you next time. Thank you guys for being on. See you, Matt.
Bye, Jared.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe and share with others so that they can join us on this journey. I'll see you next time.